I don't usually remember my dreams. The only times I do is when they have stupidly intricate plots that I wake up at the end of like it was a movie, or like the other night when my brain fabricates an entire situation so I can win a non-existent argument. For some reason in this dream I was back in my high school, but this time I was a substitute teacher and a bunch of the students were being idiots, like the bullies out of every teen movie ever, bragging about some ridiculously malicious thing they did. I don't know where this particular dream came from. There thankfully wasn't really any bullying that I was exposed to at my high school other than one Spanish teacher who really hated me for some reason. But I guess my sleep brain just needed to vent about stuff and conjured up an audience to lecture. I won the imaginary debate by calling them all out as badly written Disney villains, and frankly I don't think I would have remembered literally anything else from the stream if it weren't for the 1 point dream me came up with, because it was something I wish I could tell myself at that point in my life. People think that maturity is tied to getting older, that you just kind of grow up and suddenly everything makes sense. And yeah, a lot of words tied to the concept of wisdom or whatever come from age, because as you get older, you get a lot more context on things you didn't have before. But growing as a person and growing up are two different things. And I woke up after that dream just kind of thinking about that. Recently, I played Final Fantasy IV for the first time, a game that marked a very specific point in the history of the medium. It was 1991, the Super Nintendo had only been out for about a year in Japan and was only just about to release in North America. Video games were steadily growing, and soon enough it would hit the transition point to 3D graphics, but for now they were just learning about all the things they could do moving from 8 to 16-bit processing. In many ways, Final Fantasy IV was the first big boy FF, and as such used everything the team had learned from the first three, as well as the other games Squaresoft had made up to that point, to create something new and special. When I mentioned I was starting that game to my brother, he laughed and told me that the game's story felt like it was written by an 8-year-old. Naturally, I assumed that that meant it was bad in some way and was a product of its time. And it wasn't until I actually rolled credits on FF4 that I realized what he had actually meant. Final Fantasy IV feels like an 8-year-old wrote it. More specifically, it feels like I went to myself at 8 years old, playing with my Legos and action figures, and asked him what he was imagining. FF4, like a kid's imagination, is pure, raw, and throws everything at the wall at the speed of light because plot twists are cool, goddammit, and we're here to have fun. Have you ever heard the phrase, kill your darlings? Basically, it means that while you're writing a story, every plot idea and character is your darling that you love dearly. But in order to make a more poignant and precise story that isn't bogged down, you need to cut things that ultimately don't matter to what you're trying to say. FF4 thinks that that idea is stupid, and honestly, it kinda works for that game. I left my experience with FF4 with a big stupid smile on my face, cause I felt like a kid again. It's a game that in the face of a new console generation and a wider market, chose to grow instead of growing up. And I don't think everybody really gets that idea nowadays, cause video games as a market and medium have become too big in some ways. Now, I wanna be clear, I'm not saying gaming is dead, far from it in fact. There are countless new releases that are blowing up in the best way possible on all levels of the industry, from indie to AA to AAA. What I am saying is that there are now a lot of examples of games and corporate decisions that are growing up instead of just growing, and that needs to be addressed, because when you grow up, you start to look down. I mean, just look at the current Final Fantasy releases. Now, disclaimer, all of these are great games that I enjoyed. I am not saying these games are bad because I'm criticizing them. But also, why are the new FF7 remakes not turn-based? Like, don't get me wrong, those games play very well, but they also don't play anything like Final Fantasy VII. And FF16, while also a great game with great combat, isn't a Final Fantasy game per se. And once again, that doesn't make these games bad. I just really heavily disagree with the mindset that was publicly advocated and talked about constantly with the marketing of these games. That people don't play turn-based games anymore, so we'll change it for the sales to go up. And it's that kind of growing up, the corporate growing up, that really gets to me. Because it wasn't made from the standpoint of making a good game, it was made from the standpoint of selling a marketable product. And I'm not saying they shouldn't try to sell their game more, rather that it shouldn't have been the decision for the direction of the whole franchise. All the more active combat Final Fantasy games are good, even Stranger Paradise, but the last actual turn-based game in the notably turn-based franchise was in 2003, and that streak is only just now being broken with Final Fantasy Resonance. It was also the attitude of, well, no one likes turn-based games anymore that really got to a lot of people, because it was the kind of growing up people do when they try to cover up their childish exploits instead of, acknowledging them. FF4 feels like it was written by an 8-year-old, but that doesn't mean I should be shunning it because I was 25 when I played it. Getting older doesn't mean you're getting better in some way that you were before, just more fully formed. One Piece isn't a masterpiece because of how peak it is almost 30 years in, it's a masterpiece because the line from a kid getting a straw hat to him becoming the king of the pirates includes both points A and B, and point B is true to where point A started things off. When a choice is made to make a new game or show or anything grow up from its roots, it usually means rejecting those roots. Growing, on the other hand, requires those roots in the first place, and I fear that a lot of the big gaming companies are cutting off their roots to try and build something new, but in doing so, they're just kind of causing a mass deforestation. In a lot of ways, the current AI and gaming situation reminds me a lot of the 1990s comic book market crash. The industry at the start of that decade was growing rapidly and in new ways, with big landmark issues like, the death of Superman and the relaunch of X-Men, selling like nothing before, complete with multiple printings with variant covers, getting prices to skyrocket in the secondhand market. So, understandably, I suppose, from a business perspective, the comic book companies started doing more and more events, more and more relaunches, more and more variant covers, and this new hype surrounding the market was palpable. Then, by the end of the decade, after money grab after money grab, reprint after reprint, and event after event, the bubble burst. And because they printed so many copies of each issue, under the assumption it would be worth way more later, they were all worth nothing due to the surplus. Hell, Marvel almost went bankrupt at the time. Everyone was growing up, looking down, and walking the plank. So, is the gaming industry doomed? Is AI going to take over the workforce? Is PlayStation going to collapse now after cutting off the entire secondhand market? Well, no, and God, I hope so, because that would be so funny. The big thing that gaming has right now to keep itself growing healthily is how accessible it is for new creatives. I mean, did you see Expedition 33's success? Or Silksong? I mean, Black Ops 2 got re-released and shot BO7 into the ground with its sales because people wanted to play an actual game again. And I get the unsustainability of friend slop games as much as everyone else, but the fact that they're able to be made is an amazing sign. Are things perfect? Fuck no. Are things going to get worse? In some areas, yeah, but Final Fantasy is getting a new HD 2D turn-based game that is there to save a delisted mobile game story from inaccessibility. Now, is that as big as AI companies destroying environments and jacking up prices that corporate greed is taking advantage of? No, but it is still growth. And unlike a lot of the big problems in the industry right now, that growth isn't just vertical. Because at the end of the day, the way that these malpractices are improving everything by making it grow up, it's just paper thin. It's just a bottom line, and it's up to us as consumers and creatives to grow enough to punch right through it. Hey, thanks for watching. This was just something I really wanted to talk about, so I hope you'll excuse the flowery first draft language and excessive metaphors. I tend to talk myself in circles when I feel passionate about stuff. But if you enjoyed it, please subscribe. I got a lot more content on games and other stuff I'm passionate about, and I hope you'll like that too. For now, take care of yourselves and have a good one.